welcome back. It's Teresa again here with Lake Grove Art Literacy in Lake Oswego School District. I'm here to teach the last lesson of 2025 and just give the volunteers some help, some tips for how to do this one. This is on Georges Seurat. There's a whole lesson you can watch. It's pretty a long video this time actually, so make sure that you leave time for that at the beginning. Of course, the kids will watch that video, and then there's a series of art pieces they'll look through. Georges Seurat was a pointillism painter, kind of a variant on Impressionism, where he used lots of little dots. The lesson is mostly about color and how colors that are contrasting can be put next to each other, like color theory, and how that changes the different, the tone of a color, if a hue looks different if it's placed next to a different colored hue. And it's pretty interesting, it's pretty cool, but there's a few tips we want to do that make sure kids are painting the right way for this one to have the spirit of the lesson. So here's some examples of ones I did. I will say these took a little bit of time. I probably took way more than 40 minutes. Well, I don't know, I did pretty fast, but I do think that the kids might take way more than 40 minutes, so try to get through it. My daughter did one and she didn't finish quite all the way. So what you're gonna need for this lesson is a piece of paper. Have the students write their name on the back. You'll need a pencil, but they only need a pencil for this part. They're not gonna draw. They're gonna just paint directly with no drawing. So the student name, teacher, of course, flip that over. This is where the parents can help set stuff up, the volunteers. So you're gonna need paper plates. We have a bunch of them. Paint palettes, a whole lot of cut and swabs. We've gotten a bunch of these. Just get a bunch out for the students. And then we have a lot of different paints. You can kind of see the stack of different color paints we have over there. Lots of them. So you're gonna have even more than that because I'm gonna get brown as well, which was suggested in the video. And maybe like a pink and a light white, light blue, so that they don't have to mix colors, because that kind of defeats the purpose of this lesson. So my suggestion is, if you know enough about color theory, you can put these in this order. It can help. This is the color wheel. So the idea is that colors opposite on the color wheel are contrasting and complementary, and they will actually, when they're mixed together, they make brown. But that means that they actually can work together to create shadows. So blue and orange, green and red, yellow and purple. And then I put the non kind of hue colors in the middle. I'll make a couple of these, just mark them on, leave them on the tray so that you have a reference. But once we add the pink and the blue in, it's going to be a little confusing anyway. It's not that big a deal. It just kind of helps the students, if they are across from each other, to say, oh, you're working with red, maybe you want to work with green to make your shadows. But we can get into that, and we can put in the slideshow, there's a reference with the color wheel, so you can put that up on the screen if you want. The only other thing you'll need for this one is there's a bunch of art examples, reference photos. These are in the slideshow as well, but if you want kids to be able to like kind of see them up close, they don't have to do these exact ones. They can imagine something or whatever, but it can help. In the video, they say use black and white. That way I think allows them to kind of free up their minds from using the color that's exactly here. But I included the color version as well, so you can color match if you want. But that's what you'll need. So I'm gonna do an eggplant today, but you know, they can think up a banana, they can think up, this is from a hot red bell pepper that was in the video. They don't have to do the exact thing here, so I'm not gonna do a bowl. I'm just gonna imagine one of these, or maybe this one, like sitting on the paper. So while the video is going, you could parents can get these ready. You could have one palette per kid, or if it's too much, maybe they can share. We had 3 of us here practicing, and it was fine to have 2 of them between the 3 of us. So what I'm gonna do here is first start with sorry about that, oops, wiggly. I'm gonna start with just the outline is what they want you to do. So I'm gonna do purple, because that's kind of the color here. I'm gonna just pick a sort of like shape, and here, I'll raise this up so you can see a little bit more. Maybe that would help. There we go. I'm just gonna do this like kind of round one here. The idea is you want it to be really big in the page, so it can be kind of loose at first, kind of a globe shape for this one. So if they're doing really small, tell them to try to make it a little bigger, fill up the page. Also, we'll have them kind of draw in a horizon line. That just kind of adds some ability for them to do a background color, which is cool. So I'll walk through that. So I just did purple all the way. I probably shouldn't have because this top is green. So now I'm just gonna stop and just kind of like map out what that might look like. So pointillism, the whole point, no pun intended, is to use dots of color to add the shading. So we don't want to do smearing type stuff. Like, you want to avoid things like this. This is my 3-year-old. He started with the dots and then just kind of started painting. The younger kids might do this, but you want to encourage them to use dots to do everything. You can see you can make lots of different dots. You can do little ones. If they push really hard, they get big bloppy dots. If there's more paint on the Q-tip, they'll get darker dots. So I usually just kind of do this outline, and then I start to look at, once you do the outline, you can start to look at the shape, the quality of the image. So it's darker at the bottom. So I'm going to do darker, bigger and darker and closer together dots at the bottom. But you'll see we can use opposing colors to kind of add in that shading. So the first step really can just be filling it all in with one color, basically. We've provided white and black as well, so that it's easy enough to add in the streaks. But if you wanted to, you could try to add those in here by doing dots kind of like this. And there's plenty of Q-tips, so if they feel like one gets too squashed, you can kind of see it gets really squashed there on the end. You can flip it. And if they don't push quite as hard, they'll get more delicate dots. So you can kind of see. So in Seurat's work, I didn't look at it too closely. I don't know if he varied the size of the dots. I think not. I think it was mostly about just color being placed next to each other. You can watch the video and see what I mean, the bio video. But you can use, you know, once you start making art, it's your own. So it doesn't really matter what technique, as long as, again, just to keep the spirit of it alive, not smearing it. So there's kind of my outline. Cool. Then I'm gonna switch, let that dry. That's a tip. You can start mixing in color, but what I did that on this one, and you can kind of see it got really gloppy. It's fine, but it was kind of hard. It starts to mix the colors. So one tip is to let it dry a little bit, switch to a different color. So got this one green. Just going to start doing the green here. And of course, these are tempera paints. They're very washable. That's great. They're also a little see-through. So that's another thing, is that really Seurat would have kept the colors completely separate. I'm doing some layering here. It's almost like ink printing or something where you can layer the ink. That's just gonna happen, totally fine. But really the idea would be lots of separate dots, not touching each other probably, but very small. We don't have time for that. And you get the idea across anyway. So there's green. You can kind of explain to the students, so what's the opposite of green that would make maybe shadows would be red. You can also though add in highlight colors. So for instance, I think I want this to be kind of a highlight here. You can see that there's like the idea that there's white right here where the light hits it. So you can add that in. And that's how you give it some dimension, as they say in the video, like 3-dimensional. I also realized I didn't give it a stem, so I can do that. Something like this. Cool. Okay, keep going. then for the opposite of the purple, I'm gonna go ahead and do purple, yellow. That seems kind of counterintuitive, right, to make a shadow, but it will kind of work once you get in here. You can also, this is where the brown would come in handy. They use this in the video, in the demo video, with their huge brown. So you can kind of see from far away, from up close, I guess. Up close, the yellow and the purple are distinct, but the further you get away, the more it looks kind of just like an effect that's brown. If you want to explain it to the kids in terms they understand, I don't know if kids these days sit up close. Kids these days, I don't know if you can still get this one on an LCD screen. I don't think so, but when you used to sit really close to the TV and you could see all the colors. But a different way to explain it would be in Minecraft. So in Minecraft, everything is basically the same, like 2-3 shades of green and yellow, but the way they're combined together into pixels, it ends up creating these kinds of effects where they can see, it looks different. There's darker greens, lighter greens, the brown adds in some color. So it's kind of like that same idea. It's like pixel art was probably born from this idea. Okay, I'm just adding in some white to kind of like give some streaks back to where I missed some earlier. I also noticed that these aren't exactly purple, right? They're a little bit pink. Well, I don't have pink. So what I'm gonna do is just add a little bit of small dots of red. Just kind of throughout, because I just feel like it. See what happens. Part of it's about seeing what happens. With color theory, it's just a try it, see what happens. Yeah, kind of interesting. Okay, the next thing you can do is shadow, more shadow. So you can, this is very dark down here. I'm just gonna add some black. They warn about this in the video too, and it's true. If you use a lot of black, it takes over the whole picture. So I would use brown, or I would use the opposite color, or even like, in this case, I might use a blue, add a little blue, because that's kind of related to purple. It's next to it on the color wheel. It definitely makes sense to use some blue, I think, to shadow the green, even though red would also do the same, or do something slightly different, I guess. But I just think the green adds some, sorry, the blue adds some color, interest. Okay, I'm gonna go to red for that. When it's drying, it doesn't really look quite right, but once it's dry and you step away, have the students look at it from far away, it really starts to come together. Cool. Okay, that looks pretty good. Any more purple? I'm just adding some shading underneath. Okay, and then you put in a background. So what they want you to do is don't have it just floating in space. Put in, even though you don't see that here, right? I didn't do the bowl or anything, and that's just a table. We want to put in a background here. So for this, you can pick a color that is opposite, potentially, to make it interesting. So maybe we do something like the yellow. You can see there's some stuff on my Q-tip. I'll just get a new one. And again, like, you can see the difference between these two. So this one, I kind of space them out, let it get a gradient at the bottom. This one, she was going for really dense. This took a long time. It's totally fine, just pointing it out. You should start with maybe something like this. It can be handy to push hard for these parts because then, and use a lot of paint because it fills it in faster. This is where they'll be tempted to just scribble, and they need to not do that if possible. It will mess up the effect of the painting. If that happens, that's okay, where things get contaminated and kind of splotch in, because we'll add some extra colors. But if you had the time, we'd probably let it dry a little bit between these steps. We don't really have that time. What else? These are purposely on paper plates, so you can just toss them at the end and no cleanup, really. We have these gigantic bottles, these 32 ounce, so you should be good. But we'll keep extras in the supply closet, so you can fill them if you need to, or just swap them out. We tried to make them not the gigantic ones. That way you don't have to handle big giant gallons of paint. These ones should be manageable. Okay, I'm gonna start spacing out my dots. They don't have to go all the way to the edge, but it's kind of nice to go fill up the page as much as possible. Okay, and then you might ask, well, what next? So you want to fill up the whole page up above too, but before I do that, I'm going to add in some shadows. So the shadows here can be purple, again, to go with the idea. So you can kind of see, because it's wet, it's just kind of mixing together. So maybe it is not a good idea to do this part right now. Kind of becomes brown all on its own. They'll have to just imagine the shadow. And then I think it's going to be interesting to maybe like add in some orange. The reason I decided to add some orange is I'm gonna make the top yellow, and I want there to be some contrast between the top and the bottom. So for the top, I'm going to make it a yellow. It's just lighter, which means just further apart dots. If they really do want it to fill in, they can use the white. It doesn't show up much on the paper, but it does fill it with a texture. So if it bothers them to, like, if they want a lighter color, this is where it gets a little tricky. If they want a lighter color, they can mix the colors together on the palette. They just don't want to mix it on the painting. So if you want like a lighter blue, you can get, which is what I did here. I mixed some white and some blue together to get that. I ended up just ordering some light blue and some pink, which can help, I think, with this, because I think that's going to be the hardest part. The cooler paintings look really, really dense and full with color. So if you have the time, go for it. But it can be overpowering to have all these really bright colors together in one piece. Okay, I'm going to go back to some shadows here. Because I put the light here, I'm imagining that the shadows are kind of off to the edge, going this way. The purple's already pretty dark, so I'm using a lot of black here to have a defined edge. But if you were doing like a carrot, like they do in the video, it's a lot easier to get that effect because the orange next to a dark color like a blue will be a little bit easier to discern. It's a little hard to see here. So that's about it. Just one fruit or vegetable. Don't have to do a whole group, even though the pictures have a bunch. Yeah. And if you want to put a little bit of shadow back behind here, you can. It kind of messes it up. Let's fix this edge with this. There we go. Cool. So there is my eggplant in the style of Georges Seurat. Thank you so much. At the end, like I said, toss all these parts, clean up the cart. They're tempera, so they'll wash off. We'll include some wet wipes. Put everything back and ready for the next class. And we'll put the drying racks on top as well, so you can just make sure that they don't stack on top of each other too much, and they should be good to go. Don't forget the names on the back, please. Thank you. Happy spring.